with the divorce rate being 50%, the majority of those being filed by women, men are asking the question, is marriage even something worth pursuing nowadays? And some men would say no, and that today's modern women are just not worth the effort, that they're simply all tainted, that the legal system actually rewards them for leaving, or that you were simply just a suitable consolation prize to the Chad that she really wanted to be with, but she had to choose somebody because TikTok, her biological clock, was ticking. Now, some or even all of these ideas might be valid, but the many problems that we have with today's women, and there are many to be sure, that's just not something we're going to be talking about today in this video. What is conveniently overlooked by men is how they factored in or played a role in its demise. Now, this self-reflection does usually happen, but it usually only happens after the divorce is complete, once that chaos dies down and the dust kind of settles. And it's only then when the men can be like, okay, yeah, in retrospect, I can look back and I might have done X, Y, and Z, or I didn't do X, Y, and Z, and he can usually see his contribution to its demise. So the majority of men will go through that self-reflection process, but some men never get there. They kind of just get stuck in this like blame game where they are using the institution of marriage itself almost like a patsy, where he needs someone or something to blame outside of himself instead of taking that look to self-reflective exactly what his role was in the downfall of the whole situation. It's like blaming the fact that you had a car accident on a flawed traffic system when it was actually you who just ran a red light. So the traffic system's fine. Millions of people go to and fro every day with it. But Monica, you may say, I had nothing to do with this. The car crashed into me. Well, that's a valid response. I mean, some car crashes are inevitable. Some are truly unavoidable. But most crashes, even when there is a person who is clearly at fault, still could have been headed off from having a crash if the other driver had better due diligence or maybe some additional skills. So it's our behaviors and our decisions combined with the lack of information and skills that cause the crashes on the road and in our marriage. So it is very easy to finger point and to kind of get caught up in this gender war to justify our own particular stance about how it was the other person's fault. So we can avoid doing the hard work, which is to take a cold, hard look at ourselves and see where we failed in this whole process, to reverse engineer what went wrong so we can learn from our mistakes and do a better job next time. And perhaps, if nothing else, to maybe help save other men from making the same mistakes as well. So it's not the institution of marriage itself that is the problem. Rather, it's how we are doing marriage that is actually the real problem. And after having interacted with thousands of you men, with coaching and reading your comments and in my community, I'm seeing the same mistakes from men over and over again. There are these commonalities, there's these patterns that are leading to poor results in marriage. So if we can identify these commonalities, these patterns, not to justify how awful women are or how marriage isn't worth the effort, but rather as a way to figure out what works and what doesn't, could that information not provide you with an unfair advantage? It would almost be like you going to Las Vegas and playing craps with weighted dice. While it's not going to absolutely guarantee your success, it's going to greatly enhance the chances of it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to discuss the 5 biggest mistakes that men make that ultimately lead to divorce. So let's get right into it. Hey, I'm just swinging in real quick to make sure that you have hit that subscribe button because we all know there's no such thing as too much Monica in your life. Also, I want to let you know about my community on School. It's a platform that allows us to take these conversations and these ideas that we start right here on YouTube and take them into a more in-depth conversation. So if you're having relationship problems you want my opinion on, head over there now, and I'll put that link in the description as well. And finally, everyone, we all know that Christmas is coming. And we all know you guys are awful at shopping, and I'm going to help you out right here. So head over and get yourself a Cup Cozy pillow. It's a soft, portable cup holder where you can put all your drinks, your snacks, your remotes, everything that you need, exactly where you want it. I'm the inventor and the owner, Amazon or cupcozypillow.com. Now that I've solved your shopping dilemma, let's get back to the episode. The first mistake men make that leads to divorce is they improperly vet the woman to begin with. Men are not taking the necessary time or doing the due diligence required to actually properly vet their women, to ensure that what he thinks he's signing up for, the woman that he thinks he's getting, is actually the woman he's getting. Men are entering into marriage just far too quickly, but time itself is the only way to see a woman's true colors. Like, she can act a certain way for a certain period of time, but it's going to be really hard for her to hide her real true nature for any long extended period of time. And the time frame required to vet a woman has to be long enough for that honeymoon stage, which can last for up to 2 years, to go away. Why is this important? Well, it's because during the honeymoon stage, you cannot see a woman clearly for who she really is. You are both chemically intoxicated. All those annoying or problematic behaviors, they're there, but you just can't see them. And you can't see them because you're wearing a chemically induced pair of rose-colored glasses. Your ability to use reason and logic to make great long-term decisions are greatly reduced at this time. And then you add in the fact that you're probably going to be having some really amazing and frequent sex into the equation, which is going to further chemically blind you to her and her problematic behaviors, all because your big head is chemically hijacked and your little head is happy as a lark. So we have this like perfect chemical storm to blind a man to a woman's ways that makes her just seem so alluring and way less problematic than she may truly be. So let's say that you make it out of the honeymoon stage and you do start noticing some problems. You're starting to notice some red flags. And this is where stage 2 kicks in, which is denial. And that's just simply where you're thinking, okay, well, things aren't that bad. Her past doesn't seem to really be that much of a problem. Sure, she might have had sexual trauma in the past, but, she's still showing up fine in the bedroom. I mean, it should all be good, right? Or that sudden irritation that she's starting to show towards you, she's probably just stressed. She's probably had a rough time at work lately. Or maybe that's why she's starting to not have sex as much with you. So you give her grace, but then you give her way, way more grace than she deserves. And many times at this point, you might actually even be engaged. Like, the invitations can already be sent out. But now you're seeing things much more clearly. And there's kind of like this internal panic inside. But being a man who typically likes to ignore problems, you don't confront the issues, or you don't terminate the relationship, and you decide that staying silent when you shouldn't be staying silent is the better way to go. So you start playing this like happy wife, happy life game to a woman who you haven't even said I do to yet. And you end up marrying a woman who deep down in your heart, you have no business marrying. So a man will voluntarily seal himself into a contract with a woman who he knows he shouldn't be marrying. And the majority of men, being good men, many who are men of faith, are simply unwilling to undo it because it goes against his faith and he took a vow to God, or it's just too horrifically expensive to walk away from. All because he didn't take the necessary time to vet a woman to get out of that honeymoon stage. And then once he saw the red flags, he continued to ignore them when they were clearly there. So why do men do this? And the most common response that I get is like, he says he loves her. But the fact is, unless you get past the honeymoon stage, you can't even love the real woman. You haven't even met her yet. You love a fantasy. You love this idea of the woman who she is at the moment, the one who's showing up in the honeymoon stage. But you don't even know who that real person is until you get outside of it. And on top of it, you don't even have the rational, logical capability to make great long-term decisions until you get out of that stage too. What men are viewing as love is simply lust or limerence. You are smitten with her physical beauty and the fact that she's sexually available, but both of your heads are compromised. The fact is, men do a far better job vetting a new car than they do vetting the woman that he decides that he's going to marry. And they'll spend so much time on looking at the performance metrics, looking at the horsepower. How quickly can it go 0 to 60 miles per hour? What kind of fuel efficiency does it have? And then they go down for the test drive. And then you want to see how she feels in your hands. And then you're going to calculate the cost of ownership. And then there's all this research and thought and intentionality that goes into buying a car. But that same intentionality is not brought into the due diligence and the research required to properly vet a woman. And so 6 months into seeing this lady, you decide everything's great. It's always going to be great. So let's get married. But the only way to properly vet a woman is with time and keen observation. And I'm not saying that it should just be entirely a logic-based decision. that you should discount that emotional component. I mean, we aren't Vulcan, because there are times like when you meet your spouse and you know right away, like, you know, in the depth of your soul. I know that's how it was when I met Michael. I knew, I'm like, that's my husband. I knew it right away. Took him longer to come to that same conclusion. But with the statistics being that 50% of marriages ending in divorce, it is better to trust yourself, but let time verify that choice. So what time does is it allows that honeymoon stage to end. It allows you to verify your feelings. It allows you to take those rose-colored glasses off so you can properly ascertain this woman, her qualities, her traits, her values that are going to be required for a happy and healthy marriage that can last for decades. The second mistake men make that ultimately lead to divorce is that they do not lay out their expectations. We all come into marriage with expectations of what that means and what it looks like. You do, and so does your wife. But the majority of the time, those expectations don't line up. But unlike marriages in the past, how today's marriages operate is largely undefined. So the both of you are going to be walking in with this kind of like vague idea of what you want it to look like, but reality is going to play out differently. And when it does, it comes with a whole lot of conflict and strife, because where there are unmet expectations, disappointments arise. And you can't really blame a woman when this happens, because you never verbally laid out what your standards and expectations were. You never gave her the opportunity to hear what those are and to have the discussion and to negotiate with you about how it was that she is supposed to show up in the marriage. So she can either agree to that, negotiate, or just simply say, yeah, sorry, no, I'm not willing to do those things. But because of the dynamics of today's modern marriage are so undefined, having those unsexy conversations about what exactly our marriage is going to look like in all areas, including the bedroom, is no longer optional. But all of those discussions just get kicked down to a later point in time, till after the wedding, where your ability to have any kind of leverage for change relies solely upon her willingness and ability to want to do so. And if she doesn't, well, buddy, it is what it is. The failure to lay out all those standards and expectations ahead of time leads to a whole host of problems. And along with those unvoiced expectations, we also bring in assumptions that everything is going to stay exactly the same as they were. And this is especially true when it comes to the topic of the frequency and the level of enthusiasm a woman has for sex. But relationship cycles are predictable. We have the honeymoon stage, which we just talked about before. And then after that, then that desire for sex will drop, both on her end and yours. But her side is going to tank significantly more than yours. And that is just due to simple biology, as a woman has far less testosterone than men do. So if you move forward in marriage believing and assuming that her sexual desire is going to stay the same as yours, or the same as it is during the honeymoon stage, you are simply setting yourself up with an unrealistic expectation of what is normal and predictable for relationships, because all couples will experience that. But even if that is the norm, you're still okay having higher than normal expectations and standards in all topics, even sex. But those standards and expectations, they cannot be expected if they are not voiced, if they're not agreed upon. They cannot stay in your head and then you get disappointed when they're not met. She must be afforded the opportunity to hear what those are, to agree to them. And if she won't agree to them, then she's probably not the woman for you. She's probably just not sufficiently attracted to you enough, because women will do whatever they need to do to keep a man that they love. And then with that information, you can either move forward with the relationship, or you can decide that this is probably not going to work out. I mean, can you imagine having this conversation saying like, babe, I just wanted to get on the same page with you here. I love you. I love having sex with you. It's the way I feel the most emotionally connected with you. But I do need to let you know that I do have the expectation that you will continue to prioritize that aspect to our relationship, just like you're doing right now. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to express any concerns, to decide if this is a standard that is something that you're willing to meet. And if not, I need to know this now so that I can decide what our future looks like. And I can practically hear the women screeching about this, saying, Monica, sex is supposed to be about sharing love and emotional connection. It's not about meeting some kind of performance metric. And ladies, like, if you have a problem with this, I'm not telling you you have to meet that standard. I'm saying that choice is always yours. All relationships are an at-will decision, right? Just like at work, you can walk away from the job at any time if you don't like the standards that your boss is imposing upon you. You're not shackled to that job, and you're not shackled to that man. And if you have a problem with your man's standards, then you probably aren't really as emotionally invested in him as you're going to need to be to make that relationship last long term anyway. He's probably not the man for you. You should probably set him free, because the reality is women will bend over backwards for the man she truly loves and desires. So these discussions are just never happening, but the expectations will remain, and the guy is going to get mad and bitter that she's not holding up her part of the contract that she never agreed to. Guys, you made assumptions that were incorrect. And so here you are, stuck in an awful marriage, trying to enforce something that was never agreed upon. And a lot of men have a problem also with this idea of even holding a woman to a certain standard. Like, who am I as a man to tell a grown woman what to do? But not holding your wife to any kind of standard at all is simply unloving. As a man, you must do what is right, even if it's difficult. And that means ensuring that the emotional connection in your relationship stays strong on both sides. It does not mean that you are pouring into her and pouring into her, ensuring that her core needs are met, while simultaneously ignoring your need for respect and sex. You can't even properly love a woman if you aren't having your core needs met. You can't even be a proper husband to her. And guys, let's also not forget that women have no problem holding your feet to the fire, that they feel you are slacking in any kind of area whatsoever. Like, take a note from the ladies here. You would never expect your boss to pay you the same amount of money if your performance dropped at work, would you? But women want you to believe that their performance as a wife isn't subject to standards. And that will be true if you allow it. So, trying to hold a woman to a higher standard after the fact, after the wedding has already happened, is going to be quite difficult. It's going to be a battle. And the only way you can do so is to have a high enough sexual marketplace value where she knows that she can easily be replaced and you have the balls to actually walk if necessary. If you wait to lay all of this out until after the wedding, you are going to be in a far inferior position. So guys, you can no longer live in this kind of fantasy Disney world when it comes to marriage. You're going to have to stop being avoidant. You're going to have to put on the big boy underwear here. You're going to have to start laying out how things are going to go in your relationship. You can't avoid these discussions and then get upset when your wife isn't living up to them. You've never laid out the vision of what your marriage is going to look like. You just assume your vision and hers are the same. And so here you are. The third mistake that men make that ultimately leads to divorce is that he has forgotten or abandoned his role as the leader. If you were to ask any woman what she truly wants in a husband, you're almost always going to hear that she wants a strong leader. Even though today's women are perfectly capable of financial independence, the traditional marriage dynamic in marriage is as powerful as ever. Now, leadership in marriage is a super deep topic, and I've already done several videos on that, and I'll link those in the description. So I'm not going to go into too deep of a conversation here, but the single most important point here is that there's always a leader in the relationship. And if it's not you, it's her. If she ends up being the leader in the marriage, it's either because you dropped the reins of leadership or you willingly handed it over. This creates a female-led marriage, and almost no one, especially her, is going to find that attractive in the long run. And this is because a woman cannot respect a man who she can dominate. Leadership is proactive, meaning that you can't just go to work, come back home, flop on the couch, and think that's going to be enough. That is the 1950s standards. And the thing is, you don't need anyone's permission to lead. Like, you just simply step up and do it. Yes, she may subconsciously test you and fight for control of it, but if she's able to do that, you will both lose. Far too many men fall in the trap of laziness and assume that the women can assume the same level of burdens that they can. You want women to be soft and feminine, but then expect her to shoulder masculine responsibilities. Forcing your wife to bear the burden of leadership because you're unable or unwilling is one of the most unloving things you can do. The reason why marriage seems so hard today is because we don't have any really defined roles anymore. Women are outpacing men when it comes to college graduation. They're earning more money. Society as a whole is safer, and women have self-defense tools. They don't need that traditional provider and protector role anymore. But the thing that's missing from this conversation is the fact that people are entering into relationships now based not upon need, but because they want to. But just because women no longer need men and enter into a relationship out of want doesn't mean that that programming of what we find valuable in men goes away. It does not mean that what actually works in practice isn't still relevant. So we go in this idea that we're all the same and we're going to talk about everything and be 50-50 partners. But that's not what really works in reality. What really works is an actual hierarchy. Yes, you can and should be partners who talk about everything and solve 99.9% of your issues together. But when push comes to shove, when there is no one real captain, someone ultimately who is going to be held accountable for the direction of the ship, that's problematic. That partnership is the what, but the how is a traditional hierarchy. And the man needs to be at the top of that hierarchy because it is a burden of leadership. The healthiest marriages aren't built on making both people share an equal burden. They are built with a hierarchical structure where a man leads and a woman is excited to follow the right man. And that structure where the man's leading and the woman's following is what actually works to maintain long-term respect and attraction on both sides. The fourth mistake that men make that ultimately lead to divorce is that they avoid problems like the plague. The first three problems that we've all discussed share one thing in common, and it's this. Men are avoiding conflict and problems like the plague. Men mistakenly believe that if they ignore the problems or issues, then that with time things will just magically fix themselves. But women don't work this way. They must work through the problems, and this is done primarily through talking about it. So when a woman approaches you with concerns, many times a man will jump into a defensive posture. So instead of feeling seen and heard and making her feel like she matters to you, instead of being the calm in the storm that she's seeking, you dismiss her. You clam up, you fire back, you deny the problems exist at all. So imagine that your woman's problems is like a 45-pound weighted plate. So imagine your wife's problems are like this. Oh my God, this is heavy. This 45-pound weighted plate. Okay, I'm gonna put this down. Okay, because it is heavy. But she's walking around. Hold on. Imagine her having to walk around carrying that thing. This thing that's really bothering her. And she has chosen to come to you because she knows that you are stronger than she is. And she knows that if she could just talk to you about it, that she can drop this weight and that she can move forward lighter and freer. But when she comes to you and you refuse to address the problem, and instead of lifting that heavy weight off of her shoulders, you add more to it. And I can understand maybe having like a strong defensive posture if maybe the tone or her delivery sucks. Like maybe she's being disrespectful. Maybe you feel like her communication is actually just seeking to harm or injure instead of actually solve a problem. But if your wife is having problems, why would you not want her to come to you about it? Like she's doing right by you. She is attempting to correct things. You should not receive that as a personal attack, but rather as a good faith effort on her part to restore the marriage. All marriages are going to have problems. So you shouldn't think, oh my gosh, our marriage is fundamentally flawed. We have so much conflict. We have so much strife. That's not really like the measure of the health of a relationship. A better measure would be how quickly do those problems get resolved? How quickly can you work through them? Does your wife feel safe coming to you and leaning on you? Or when she does that, when she's trying to do right by you, do you cause more problems and add to that stress? So this really is a situation where it just requires a mental reframing of what problems mean. And you can do this even to the point to where you are actually grateful when she comes to you with problems because you're like, oh my gosh, she trusts me. She wants to work past this. This can be a good thing. Because you never want to get it to a place to where she goes silent. Silence is never a good thing when it comes to a woman. And what I noticed in my marriage is that I was the only one going to Michael with problems. He was never coming to me. I'm like, I know I'm doing things that are pissing you off. So what would normally happen is he would save all those. He would like save them up for a rainy day. And then those times that I go to him with an issue, he felt, oh, okay, now we're talking about issues. Let me get out my bank. Let me get out my bank of problems that I've been saving. So now, instead of sticking with that one problem, we have this whole stinky pile of problems to contend with. And now I'm pissed off because this has now been turned around on me. And we are now talking about all this other crap that he has issues with instead of talking about the one thing I initially had wanted to discuss. So you will know you're guilty of this if your wife is the only one bringing up issues. If you're not saying anything because you're trying to be a peacemaker, you're avoiding conflict. It's an indicator that you need to work on your masculine frame. You should not be making your wife bear that burden of being the one who is always bringing up issues. But so many men are just avoidant in having these discussions because they're just so uncomfortable with a woman's emotional volatility. And until you are able to handle her raw emotions, that just means that you just need to work on that muscle. It is a masculine frame issue that you're going to need to exercise to where you're able to handle her emotions without your own being ruffled. If you are never approaching your wife, letting her know the things that are bothering you, the things that you feel she needs to correct, you are not doing your job as the leader in the home. The fifth mistake that men make that ultimately lead to divorce is that they don't get a prenup. One of the most reliable ways to ensure that your marriage has a high chance of survival is simple. Marry a woman who is genuinely excited to marry you, not a woman who is excited about having a wedding or a ring or a title. And there's a brutally effective litmus test for that excitement. Tell her you want a fair and reasonable prenup. A woman who is truly in love with you and sees a lifelong future together may not like the idea. Nobody likes talking about divorce on the way to the altar, but if she really does love you, she will sign it. A woman who bristles, fights, guilt trips, threatens to leave, or suddenly rethinks the whole marriage when the word prenup comes up, that's a flashing red light there. That her excitement may be more about the lifestyle, the wedding, the security blanket than it is about you, the man. The cold hard realities is that roughly 40 to 50% of marriages in the US are going to end up in divorce. And women are going to be the initiator of 70% of those. And neither one of you may like the idea of a prenup, but you already have one. It's just one that's written by the state. So you may not like the idea of a prenup, but regardless, you're going to have one. And it's either going to be one that you do or it's going to be one that the state does. And the one that the state provides isn't great for men. So we know the stats on divorce, but yet only 5 to 15% of couples actually go through the process of getting a prenup. We buy life insurance, even though we don't plan on dying, but we're refusing to buy marriage insurance, even though half of marriages die. And that idea is irrational. So let's talk about the real benefits of a well-crafted prenup. The first benefit is that it's going to assure you of her intent, that she is marrying you for the right reasons. The second is that it protects both of you guys from each other's future mistakes. It can keep any debts separate. It can protect inheritance, maybe any business windfalls that come your way. Another benefit is it's going to save you a whole lot of money in the divorce proceedings if it ever goes that way. Having a prenup in place is going to significantly reduce your legal fees and shorten the process. It's going to make things less ugly. Another benefit is it forces you to have that money conversation on the front side. You're going to be talking about spending habits. What happens if X, Y, and Z? So if there's any kind of really vast discrepancy in your mindset as far as money concerns, it's going to be laid out ahead of time. Another benefit is that it provides that necessary leverage a man has in the marriage to exit quickly if necessary. And this is a problem because far too many men that I talk to are staying simply because they say they can't afford to leave. So that prenup removes those golden handcuffs and paradoxically make more men willing to lead and stay calm and invested in the marriage because they're no longer prisoners. So there you have it. The 5 top mistakes men make that ultimately lead to divorce. What did you think? Let me know in the comments. And make sure you stick around to watch this next video because YouTube thinks that you're really going to love it. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.